Welcome to John Redmann Power of Attorney, the show that aims to empower you through knowledge of the law. I'm Attorney John Redmann. As part of our ongoing series covering the November 4th Louisiana elections, we're going to speak with the three candidates for Section D of Criminal District Court in New Orleans. Criminal District Court handles all types of serious crimes, and whoever wins this race will have the responsibility of adjudicating many of these cases. Frank Marullo is the incumbent, and he has held this position for 40 years. Judge Marullo was appointed to the bench in 1974 by Governor Edwin Edwards, and he is the longest tenured judge in the state of Louisiana. He is challenged by Marie Williams, an attorney in private practice since 1996, who has also worked as an advocate for troubled youth, battered women, and the homeless. And the third challenger is Graham Bosworth, a criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor for the Orleans Parish District Attorney's Office. Our goal today is to have a cordial, productive Q&A that lets the voting public get to know the candidates, their ideas, and the issues a little better. So coming up next, we begin our Q&A with the candidates, Judge Frank Marullo, and attorneys Marie Williams and Graham Bosworth. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show. On Tuesday, November 4th, today's guests will face off in an election to serve as judge of Section D at Criminal District Court in New Orleans. Judge Frank Marullo is the incumbent, and he, along with his challengers, Marie Williams and Graham Bosworth, have been gracious enough to join us for this forum. Unfortunately, due to scheduling conflicts, our three candidates couldn't all be together at the same time. So I'm going to ask each of them the same set of questions, and we will show you how their answers compare. Judge Marullo, how would you define the role of a judge and what it is that most qualifies you for this position or re-election to the position?
Well, the quality that I have that is I've been there a long time. I've tried the most jury trials in the state, and when in a criminal court, that's what it is. It's mostly a jury trial. So I've been there a long time. I've tried murders, armed robberies, rapes. So I've stumbled over all of these cases, and you do get better as you do things. It's like riding a bike. So I think I'm well qualified.
Next question. What is the most pressing issue facing criminal court today?
Finances. We're in a position where we used to get about $3.2 million from the city, and we get approximately $5 million from the state. The $3.2 million is down to $700,000. So we've let people go that do good work for the court, particularly in rehabilitative services, which we really need. So we're affected, and it's mostly a monetary thing.
Okay. Recent census figures demonstrate that the gumbo of our racial makeup in New Orleans has a lot more Hispanic flavor. How does your court respond to that?
Well, Hispanics are part of the court system. I mean, they come in as victims, come in as defendants, mostly as victims. And with the new wave of people that came here and rebuilt New Orleans, we often see Spanish people. We often need interpreters to make sure they get a fair trial.
Louisiana is known as the incarceration capital of the world, which is a very expensive burden for our taxpayers. What ideas would you like to see implemented to help rehabilitate criminals, especially nonviolent criminals?
Well, we have a lot of rehabilitative services. I started the first drug court in Louisiana. We have drug testing inside the court building, which I don't think you have anywhere in the nation. We got compensation, compensation for victims. We got intensive probation, which gets a closer eye on the defendant and takes care of his problems. So we've done all of those things. You can always improve. But again, I hate to keep saying the same thing. The improvement would come with technology, master calendar dockets, things like that. But that all requires money.
Some people argue that attracting and keeping the best and brightest people to work as judges requires things like competitive pay and quality fringe benefits, and even paid vacation where quality seminars are taught, and friendly interaction with attorneys and other judges is encouraged. And others disagree with that. They argue that since the judges are paid with taxpayer dollars, the pay, benefits, and out-of-town seminars should be scaled back, and never mind that comparable jobs in the private sector often offer the same benefits. What do you think should be offered to attract and keep quality judges?
I think you got to keep the judges learning new things. And the only way you learn new things is when you face with people in the same category as you are, but in a different location, different venue, and you compare notes. I think these seminars are vital to us keeping up with the law and also in the management of the court.
You mean the seminars out of town?
Seminars in town, out of town, wherever. I teach at a lot of seminars. Primarily in the last few years, last 20 years, I've been teaching anything about the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 8th Amendment. Those are the things that I deal with every day. So I've taught seminars for at least 20 years.
One of the biggest problems facing the criminal court, as we understand it, is that you have crowded dockets. That means a lot of cases stacked up, a lot of criminals waiting trials. What plans do you have to improve on that, streamline the process in your courthouse?
Okay, well, you got several elected public officials in the courthouse. You have a district attorney, you have a sheriff, and you also have an elected clerk of court. The elected clerk of court is the party that keeps up the court going. It's the pulse of the court, keeps the dockets moving. And not to be redundant, but a master calendar docket would work. But in order for it to really work, it can't work in one section of court. It's got to be a systematic thing through all sections of court, and that should start with the clerk of court.
What is a master calendar docket?
Well, if you could look on a screen and see that a lawyer has a case in another section of court when he's scheduling a case in the same time, you're going to say, you in section G, and I'll give you a different time. So a master calendar docket would keep having lawyers in different places at the same time.
Okay, thank you. Do you believe that all citizens have adequate access to legal help and the legal system? If not, what can be done to provide wider and better access?
I think that in New Orleans, the Orleans Public Defender's Office does a tremendous job. They know pushovers. They work hard, they know the evidence, and anybody that cannot afford an attorney, and attorneys cannot afford an attorney, I appoint them, and they also, if there's more than one defendant, there's a conflict panel at that point, and sometimes we got to go to the private bar.
Okay. Please describe a situation, if you can recall, where you took a controversial position that angered or offended people, and explain how you handled it.
Well, when you're a judge, you umpire. And so you got to call it the way the facts are. You can't worry about being reelected on this case. If you worry about reelection during the time that you're doing your job, then that's a mistake. You're not the real umpire. And so there are several controversial cases I've had. And you make the call, and you know when you're making it, hey, I'm going to take a lot of heat for this. But if you don't want to take the heat, you shouldn't be a judge.
Tell us something about you that, and I think this may be our last question,
okay,
that you'd like the public to know about you in formulating their decision as to who to vote for this seat. Well,
I don't want to answer it the same way I answered the first question, but really it's experience, experience, and experience. When you do 40 years of jury trials, and it's more than 40 because when I practiced law, I did jury trials, both civil and criminal and federal. You can't buy that. The public has an investment in me because I have the experience to do this job.
Thank you, Judge Marullo, for those interesting answers and helpful and informative answers.
Thank you very much.
We have to pause right there, but after the break, we continue our judicial forum with Marie Williams and Graham Bosworth. Welcome back to the show. We're continuing our conversation with Marie Williams, who is also running for Criminal District Court in New Orleans on November 4th. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right, well, we're going to get right to the questions. So, how would you define the role of a judge, and what is it that most qualifies you to obtain that post?
My experience in the criminal justice system, my experience with indigent defendants, my experience with working with individuals in pro bono, the people in the city, jury trials. I am a former administrative law judge, gives me the experience to know how to be a judge, how to run a courtroom, and my service on the disciplinary board. It also gives me the insight to know what a judge should be, how a judge should handle themselves, and what the judge should do and should not do on the bench, and that I have the qualifications and the fairness, equality, and I'm a judge and a person who will be a fair judge.
What is the most pressing issue, do you believe, that is facing the criminal court today?
The most pressing issue facing criminal court today is the backlog of cases. The dockets are crowded. The DAs need to have a better handle on the cases as far as organization. Files are not there. Paperwork is misfiled. Too many people coming to court at the same time. Continuances of court cases for years, and just the disorganization right now in criminal district court, and it needs to be addressed, and we need to clear up the docket with the small cases so we can handle the bigger murder or other serious offenses.
Okay. Attracting and keeping the best and the brightest people to work as judges requires competitive pay and quality fringe benefits, paid vacation, seminars out of town. That's what many people argue.
Yes.
Other people argue, well, hold on a minute, these are taxpayer dollars that pay these public servants, and maybe we need to scale back what we're offering these judges. What's your opinion on that?
I believe that there should be a limit on how much the judges should spend on going to the seminars. Of course, they are necessary. All have to take so many credit hours. I usually take them with the we used to be at the trial lawyers for public justice, but it's different now. But I do the 2D seminar. I only spend $600. So I think there should be a limit on how much a judge should spend, and I think that the public should also be aware of the receipts and how much, because right now they don't have to give an accounting to the public or anyone of how much they spend. And I just believe there should be a limit, because it is a taxpayer's dollars, and the money is also being taken out of the courts. So if you use all the money up on trips, that is less money that could be used towards some type of program in the courthouse.
Okay. Recent census figures demonstrate that the gumbo of our city has a lot more Hispanic flavor.
Yes.
How would your court respond to that?
My court will respond to that in the fact that I will definitely have someone who is bilingual. My husband, he speaks English and Spanish. And in our office, we have only one person who speaks English. And to work with us, you have to be bilingual, because we know that today there are many more Hispanics coming into the city. They're into the city and into the court system. And I've had a lot of them that I represented myself who have had to get a translator. The court, requires a translator. So I would require that there's a mandatory translator in the courtroom in criminal court, because it's becoming a melting pot. And also I would have hire someone who is bilingual to deal with the people who come before the court. Okay.
New Orleans is known as the incarceration capital of the world, a very expensive tax burden. Now, what ideas would you like to see implemented to help rehabilitate criminals, especially nonviolent ones?
There should be programs to, stop the recidivism rate, first of all, and to lower the nonviolent criminals being put in jails. Because what I feel is that the jails are being full of people who are the nonviolent offenders. And I have ideas such as, first of all, I know that we have the drug court, but it needs to be enhanced. We need to do more to take care of people with marijuana use, personal crack cocaine use, and get them into some type of treatment and program, a vocational rehab, mental health facility, because a lot of the people too may have mental problems. And I'm sure you remember with the police officers, the first woman who was ever killed was by a person who had a mental health problem. This guy should have gotten some type of treatment, and they went to arrest him, but he should not have been at his house. He should have been in a mental health facility. Also, some type of educational program, because when a lot of them get out, they can't get a job, don't know where to get a job. And I think that we should work with certain programs in the city to help them get a job, so that we could stop the recidivism rate and to help out the lower level offense people when they get out of jails.
Okay. One of the big problems facing criminal court is a crowded docket. What are your plans to streamline the process and provide access to justice to as many people as possible?
The crowded dockets are a big problem. I would make sure that the DAs are prepared. If you don't come into my court and you're not prepared, I'm sorry, the case is going to have to be dismissed. I think we should also educate the New Orleans Police Department on how to prepare police reports, because they're coming in, they're not prepared, they're not properly filled out, they're not properly executed, and therefore you can't prosecute someone. So I would be firm with the DA and talk with the district attorney to train the DAs on how to handle the dockets, to make them better organized and to have them in court.
Last question. What would you like to tell the viewers as to what it is that you bring to this race? What about you that they should know that qualifies you as the person to vote for, or that they should consider voting for?
I am the candidate who is for change. I am a candidate who is for truth. I am also a candidate who is for a criminal court system that is more public friendly, a system that is for the people to curb the crime, to be tough on criminals, but yet not so tough on the lower level offensive criminals. I am a person who is just. I want to create a court that has a docket that will not be cluttered. I believe that there should be just justice. I believe in equality. I believe in that fairness for everyone, and I don't believe in corruption in the court. It does not need to be there. It needs to go away. It's time to do business and work and stop trying to be self-centered and take the money just for yourself. You're a public servant for the people. You're not doing this job just for yourself. And I think that the job of a role of a judge is to work for the people, before the people, and to try to make sure that the crime is reduced so that people can feel safe and they can know more about that. And I'm a person who is just, fair, and I believe in that I can bring that to the court. And also, we need new blood in there, and I have the passion. I'm ready to work, and I am very eager, and I guarantee you I will get things done in my courtroom.
Well, thank you very much for providing us all those answers. I'm sure the viewers have a lot more information to consider now.
Thank you.
We're taking a short break right now. Next, we'll be joined by our third guest, Graham Bosworth. Welcome back to the show. We're continuing our conversation with Graham Bosworth, third candidate for criminal district judge in New Orleans on the November 4th election. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Let's get right to it. So, how would you define the role of a judge, and what is it that you think that most qualifies you for this position?
I think the role of a judge is the neutral arbiter of a courtroom, making sure that both sides, in this case a criminal court, prosecution and defense, have equal access to present their case, equal access to justice. What makes me the most qualified, I'm the only candidate in this race who's been both a prosecutor and a defense attorney. I have lengthy experience as an appellate attorney, actually digging into and applying the criminal code, applying criminal law, and I've had ample trial experience. I'm not sure what my opponent's trial experience is actually, but I've spent the past 5 years of my career as a defense attorney doing criminal defense work and doing trial work.
Okay. What is the most pressing issue that you see facing the criminal court today?
My biggest issue with criminal district court right now is the infrastructure and, to a degree, the attitudes of criminal district court I think are outdated. You're talking about a courthouse that still has a paper filing system that requires attorneys to actually show up in court in some instances, in open court, in order to file. You're talking about a building that doesn't have a publicly accessible calendar. You have days where multiple, 20, 30, 40 attorneys, defendants, police officers show up with no idea of what's going on that day. They're forced to sit in court and hope that their case gets called that day and hope that they're actually able to be heard that day. That's a real problem. I've also been an outspoken critic of our sentencing scheme in Louisiana. We've doubled our incarceration rates over the course of the past 20 years. We are spending upwards to $800 million a year incarcerating people in Louisiana right now, but our crime rates haven't gone down. When you look at states like Texas, which have actually changed their incarceration scheme, closed prisons, are saving hundreds of millions of dollars a year, and their crime rates are actually going down, I think there's a better way to approach criminal justice, and I think that judges really need to be aware of that. I mean, obviously we're limited in what we can do by the code and the discretion that's made available to us, but being aware of that is, I think, really important on the court.
Next question. Some people argue that attracting and keeping the best and the brightest people to work as judges in the courthouse requires competitive pay, quality, fringe benefits, educational programs that keep them educated with the latest developments in the law, programs that are taught out of state. Some places you've read about, maybe in the papers in Florida. Others disagree. They say since judges are public servants, they're paid with tax dollars, maybe that needs to be scaled back, maybe done away with. Where do you stand on that?
The latter. I mean, to be honest, I don't know exactly what the pay for the judges in criminal district court is, but it's more than sufficient to ensure that you can get your continuing legal education credits without using court funds in order to do it. You're talking about a courthouse where the judges are repeatedly saying, we don't have the funds. We don't have the funds for modernization. We don't have the funds for new courtrooms. We don't have the funds to pay staff. They shouldn't be using funds unnecessarily in order to get continuing legal education, especially when it's available here in New Orleans.
Next question. How would you determine how best to use those limited court funds you just referred to?
I mean, that's a complicated question. There are some determinations that would have to be made en banc, all the judges together, sometimes in addition with the clerk of court. What I would have access to would be a fund for my particular courtroom. And I think I would utilize those funds primarily for modernization, at least in my courtroom. I would be able to establish an online calendar for attorneys, police officers, defendants, family members, witnesses to actually access and utilize. I would be able to, in theory, create a slotted docket. So those individuals would actually have a better idea of what time their case was actually going to be called. So you don't have police officers coming in at 9 a.m. and waiting until 2, sitting in a courtroom waiting for a case to be called. Those would be the kind of changes that I would use my funds for. A question was actually asked of me recently, well, don't you need additional personnel to do these kind of changes? And I mean, no. Every courtroom already has a secretary assigned to it and its available allotment of funds. Every courtroom has a minute clerk. Every courtroom has access to a law clerk. Making sure that you're utilizing those personnel will mean that I would have the capacity to use my funds to make those changes.
Recent census figures demonstrate that the gumbo of our greater New Orleans makeup has a lot more Hispanic flavor to it. Mm-hmm. How does your vision of the court system address that or factor that in?
Well, I mean, the first thing you have to do is make sure that they actually understand what's going on in the courtroom. Making sure that they have access to translators. Make sure that the proceedings are not rushed in instances where you have defendants, witnesses coming in who don't actually speak the language. I live in Mid-City. I'm actually the chair of the Mid-City Neighborhood Organization. I'm in the heart of this growing Hispanic population in the city, and as a public defender in Jefferson Parish, I deal frequently with defendants who come into the system, and it's not just that they don't necessarily understand what's being said. They don't understand anything that's happened up until that point because nobody's really taken the time to sit down and converse with them. Making sure that the courtroom understands that, make sure that it takes the necessary time to make sure these individuals know what's going on and know what has led them to be where they are is, I think, really important, and that's something that I would do as a judge.
Unfortunately, time is running out. The last question I want you to answer is, what can you tell us? What can you add to what you've already told us that you would like the voters to know about you and what you'd like them to consider and know about you in making their determination as to whom to vote for this important position in the November 4th election?
I think we as a city have reached a point where one of the main problems, one of the main restrictions on the development of the city is our criminal justice system. I think you ask anybody, our crime rate, the issues that we've had, I mean public issues with our criminal justice system has put us in a crossroad. We can either change the way things are done traditionally at Tulane and Broad, or we can continue doing the same thing. I have, before I ever announced for my candidacy for judge, been a proponent for real change in our criminal justice system. And that's what this election really boils down to. Continuing with the same method of operation, the same attitudes we've had for decades at this point, or embracing new ideas, new innovations, and new approaches to addressing crime in our city. And I'm running because I truly believe that there are new and better ways to approach criminal justice in New Orleans.
Well, that's all the time that we have. I want to thank you for coming here and sharing with us your answers and your views on what you would do as a judge. We want to remind everyone that they can learn more about everything we've talked about today on our show's website, johnredmannpoa.com. You can also learn where you need to go to vote. Watch every episode of the show and submit your legal questions that we'll try to answer on the air. A special thanks to Judge Marullo, Ms. Williams, and Mr. Bosworth. And thanks to you for watching. We'll see you next time on John Redmann, Power of Attorney. Thank you so much for being here.